Do you remember the first story that was so spellbinding that it drove you to break the rules and stay up all night? To keep reading, keep listening, keep playing? So good you forgot your life and lived there?
So good that the moment it ended, you asked yourself, what next?
Welcome to the floor. Our goal is to take you back, take you deeper, to explore and understand more, and relive that childlike wonder.
Join us as we dive deep into humanity's greatest stories, no matter how they are told, through books, movies, television, even games.
One of us does an in-depth research on our topic. One of us is familiar with the topic.
And one of us knows nothing. So the right questions will always be asked and will be addressed for anyone coming into the topic, regardless of how much you know.
Enjoy another world, another adventure, another spellbinding story. Join us on the floor.
Welcome back. We are going to be doing another intro episode. This one will be for the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Joe?
Oh, so this is Intro to Marvel. I'm excited.
You're also our Know Nothing, are you?
I am the Know Nothing. Aaron is our deep dive, and Eli, I don't know what Eli knows.
We're starting off with comics, right?
I will do my intro. I just want to make sure everyone knows who's who. I am the expert.
Wait, before we dive into this, we do want to talk about a few changes coming to the floor. One is that at our current rate, we had people at the $5 tier could both access the treasure room and request episodes. But we have enough people who have joined the Patreon at this point that we need to move those episode requests up to the next tier. So episode requests will now be at the $10 tier. But those who have built the foundation of the floor, our very first members in the treasure room, can continue.
That would be
Elijah, Sean, Kieran, Rancor, Andrew. Yeah. And Judy. And Judy, our latest member there in the treasure room.
Wait, Judy is a $5 tier now?
Yes, Judy is a $5 tier.
When did that happen?
That happened, I believe, Tuesday or Wednesday.
You didn't tell us about that?
I did. I announced that we were now fully profitable, that all our expenses were covered, and we were making income beyond the expenses.
Oh, okay. Well, I heard that part. I thought that was. Yeah. I just didn't hear the Judy part. Thank you, Judy. We should have led with that one. Thank you, Judy.
So all of those members can continue to make their episode requests, and we will cover those. But going forward, anyone else who wants to be requesting an episode, you'll need to join at that $10 tier. And this is where you will be able to request the secrets from the archivists of the floor.
Archivists.
So we did want to announce that one. It was really good news that we have enough patrons that the podcast is no longer costing us money to produce as far as like server fees and websites and everything. It now is actually making money. Not a lot, but it is making money. So that's a big step. We're
limping along, but we're limping. We're moving forward. Yeah.
So we did want to announce that change coming for anyone looking to make your episode requests. There. And thanks to our foundation for helping us get here. This is a big milestone for us.
This is huge. We want to thank all of our patrons at any tier. Thank you. We appreciate you. Anyone who's listening, thank you as well. We do this because we hope you enjoy it, and we know we do.
Hope you're ready for superheroes.
And with that, this is the intro to Marvel. I know nothing-ish.
I'm just going to take that sound clip, just Joe going, I know nothing. And we're going to use that. A lot of things. Anyways, so Marvel Cinematic Universe is what we're going to be diving into. But like all of our other intro episodes, we do not start with diving in, but with the roots or giving you the foundational knowledge. And most people are aware that the Marvel Cinematic Universe is not the original iteration of the Marvel Universe.
What?
First Marvel Universe.
This is new to me. What?
Marvel Cinematic Universe is the movies and TV shows.
Right.
The first iteration of Marvel was in 1939.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I do know comics go back that far. Like I know that.
Those are not. Marvel was not the first comics. The first time the term comic was used was in the late 19th century or mid 19th century, excuse me.
Okay.
But again, that was just a terminology. Pictorial stories were used long before that.
Yeah,
And
I guess you could say pictorial stories have been around forever, but so it's in the 1850s they start calling them comics, or at least a
they
certain
start
type.
using that term. There's still, we're going to get to, what that exactly looks like, but we're going to take a step back 45,000 years to what some believe to be the first comic. In Indonesia, there is a drawing of what appears to be a fat pig, and some people may debate that this is the first comic of Garfield. Notice how I said some people may debate.
Right.
For those at home who don't know, obviously it's not. But there have been many different cultures using their own version of comics.
Yeah. I guess
so we're going to go through those.
In that sense, like the comic actually predates written language, right? They're like, we can tell a story with pictures.
Yes. So in France, Marcel Rivdat, his dog fell into a hole, and when he went to go find his dog, and his dog fell in a hole as French dogs do, he found a huge cavern with over 600 paintings all over.
Wow.
And this is actually 17,000 BCE is
so this was the first
earliest
comic book store, right?
This is the first store. Yes, exactly.
It's like, I can't sell it to you. I just charge entry, and then you can read while you're here.
It's like the comic book museum. Exactly. But so he found that in like the early 1900s, but this is the earliest paintings on there are said to be around 17,000 BCE. And they're between 17,000 and 14,000. So there's a range there of 3,000 years of them using these.
Very successful, very long-lasting.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Did very well.
No, you're not really going to be able to demo it, right? You can't demolition that. They don't have wrecking balls. They don't have a wheel back then. So you can't take them out of business.
So, well, not only that, but I mean, it's like the only place. So it'd be like, people come from like all over the world to see this, right? Be like,
so this,
like, what is it? It's like stories everywhere.
See them. So it had rhinos, it had cattle, it had bison. There were even felines and a bird. The most notable cave was called the Aurochs Hall. Or Aurochs is the Hall of Bulls. And some of these bulls were nearing like 17 feet tall. And so this I'm going to pronounce it wrong because it's a French word, but this cavern, this place where all these paintings are, is called the Les Croix. Larix.
I've heard of this.
You did? Okay.
Yeah.
And most people believe it is spiritual or ritualistic in nature. So they're writing out their spiritual journeys or their rituals, in stories.
Yeah. I feel like this piece of information is like the ultimate comeback for anyone who likes comics and gets made fun of it. Be like, you like comics? Be like, comics are the oldest form of literature. They predate written word, man.
You think comics was the original profession?
Like long before
writers,
there were comics. Man.
Well, no, people joke about the original profession, and obviously it's sales because you had to sell something to make currency and survive. But really, it's comics because you're writing out stories and you market that stuff.
What is it? I saw Dimitri Martin. He's a comedian, and he did a funny thing about like just the development of mugging. And the guy's like, man, he's like, I own nothing except this knife. And he looks up and he sees a rich guy walking by. He's like, wait, I own a knife. That guy doesn't want to get stabbed. I can sell that. Not getting stabbed.
You could also sell insurance, so you could hire other people to try and stab him.
Like, well, that was kind of the transition. Be like, no. If you're selling not getting stabbed by you, that feels like crime. You sell insurance, that does not feel like crime.
Yeah, see, it's that fine line.
Fine line, yeah.
That's what matters. So that was 17,000 BCE is the Les Croix.
Okay.
And then in ancient Mediterranean in 3100 BCE, so this is, Pompeii-ish era, they used visual boundaries to indicate chronological advancement or movement in a story.
Oh,
Very
frames.
similar, exactly, to comic panels, like their version of comic panels.
Nice.
Mhm.
So you see that in even the ancient Mediterranean.
Mhm.
Any thoughts on that? I don't want to just keep going.
No.
Okay.
No, this is great. Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
Okay, so then in ancient Egypt, we're going to transition. We're going to jump forward to 1300 BCE. So we're
Okay.
jumping forward about 2,000
So
years.
I guess at what point do we start to get bubbles? No, just kidding. No, like at what point is there maybe text accompanying the pictures?
I will
right?
answer that.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to set the foundation. The foundation is what we were trying to do here. In Egypt, they told stories throughout pictures on their walls. Most notably, the Book of the Dead is a story that's told on, scribed in different, papyrus and on walls. And if you have seen The Mummy, that's what it's about.
Yep.
So, I mean, at this point, it's not just pictures on a wall. It's like we actually are putting pictures on paper at this point, right? In ancient
Yeah.
Egypt.
So they at some point would put it in papyrus. They had their own advancement of that. But one other thing that I love that I researched the heck out of, and I'm gonna butcher it, but they're ancient hieroglyphics, their written language.
Mhm.
That in their language, it was pronounced as, and I'm gonna butcher it, Medu-Nikha. I think it's spelled Medu-Niter, but the pronunciation that I heard, like their vowels are weird and the T and R make a K, I guess.
Oh.
But the literal translation is words of God or words of nature.
The Book of the Dead.
Hieroglyphics. No, hieroglyphics.
Oh, I see.
So they're hieroglyphics that they use. They were called their words of God or words of nature. So they used these words of nature, as it were, like picture. They're like hybrids between words and pictures.
Right.
And those you could even argue were their own kind of
Comics.
style of comics.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can see how you can look at it that way.
Yeah. So that one I thought was really cool because it was
That is really cool.
nature.
That is really cool. That is really cool.
Did I break your brain yet, Joe? I'm doing my best.
So, no, this
Impress you.
is cool stuff, man. This is cool stuff. I'm
I
excited.
wanted to nerd out hard with you about this, so I worked hard. I got my nerd friends to help me nerd with words and nerd and more nerd. Just thought I'd say nerd one more time. Anyways, next we're going to be traveling to Greece and Rome because they had myths. And those were originally auditorial in nature, and they told stories like sagas or anything like that. But
Right.
eventually they wrote them down. They
Uh-huh.
painted them on temples. They had celebrations of, the gods of that temple. They had stories of stories of Hercules's labors on
Right.
vases, and you could put the vases in order and see those stories unfold.
So, well, not only that, but you like spin it, right? And then you get a piece and you spin the next one and you spin
Yes.
the next one. Yeah.
Exactly. So you put them in the right
Interesting.
order, and you get that. You
That
could
that
get-
feels like a very comic book thing at that moment. Be like,
Exactly. Well, so Greece, I was actually talking to Drew, our patron, and I wanted to call him out specifically because he told me this. And Greece is argued to have the original funnies. They would draw pictures of people in awkward positions and write text beneath it, like funny text.
This is the first comic, right? Like at this
Yeah,
point, we've
well,
got pictures with people.
Well,
with
so it's
text.
your
Yeah.
definition of comics, because you could say the Mediterranean one was comics because they
That's
had
true.
boundaries. But if it's funnies, then it'd be Greece. So you can like kind of decide as you like discuss it, which is really cool. That's why I went so far back to the original Garfield.
Original Garfield.
And didn't Greece have a festival where they dress up as obese people? Like they just like throw on like extra blankets and stuff to make them, and they'd like go and like pretend to be all fat and wobbly and like falling over in the streets and stuff.
Never heard of this.
I haven't heard of that, but I do know that, you had Shakespeare was Rome, right?
Shakespeare was not
no.
Rome.
Was he not Rome? What was he?
He just England. By this point, it's the
Okay, so
monarch.
that was way after. I do know that
after,
Shakespeare just wrote a bunch of really inappropriate, lewd things, and people act
I
like
mean,
it's the greatest literature ever.
He's got several of his plays that take place in ancient Rome, but he himself. didn't live
Okay.
there.
I understand. That's my confusion. I only kind of listened in school, and you can easily tell what stuff I researched and what stuff I'm just guessing.
All right.
How will we?
Yeah, and what are we going to learn about in the second half of this?
We will be continuing through the ages. We will talk about the Victorian era of comics, and we are going to finish talking about Greece and Rome.
Okay.
All right, welcome back. So we are talking about, I guess, the history and the origin of the comic. And Aaron pointed out that, just like these ancient pictures drawn on cave walls and rocks and everything are kind of the earliest, I guess, lasting storytelling. Definitely verbal storytelling was the first, but this is definitely second. Before we even have written language, people are creating pictures on walls to tell their stories. And, we get the ancient Egyptians putting this on papyrus, essentially, very much like a comic. And then the Greeks who were putting them on, vases and pottery so that you can spin it to tell the story to you in order. And they're adding text under the bottom of it. So very much.
Greece was you decided that Greece was the original comics, right?
So that's for me. That's where it's like, this is a comic.
Where they had the funnies.
It's got several images telling a story. You go through them in order, and you've got text.
And they had the funnies.
And then the funnies.
Let's dive into the Lothar Crystal, because I think this is fascinating. I think the Lothar Crystal, and I'm probably butchering it. Okay. I just wanted to touch on this real quick because I thought this was interesting.
All right.
So this is something that was made. It has pictures and written word in it, and it tells a story. So this you could consider a comic. This was made. I'm not sure exactly when. It is based for the time period between 853 and 869 AD. I'm pretty sure it was made pretty recently after that time. So not like 500 years later, but like within 100 years. But I didn't find when it was made. I just know that's when it's made for.
What is it? Like,
so
what's it made out of?
I think it's on stone.
Okay.
So it's not on paper from what I could see, especially since it's still around. But it tells the story of a young woman who had some stuff happen to her. And her name is Susanna, and nobody believed her when she tried to tell them. Until a man named Daniel stood up for her, and then people believed her.
So wait, you say this is the Lothar Crystal. What is it? It's on a crystal?
It's just called the Lothar Crystal.
Okay, so what's it on? Is it just rock, paper?
Yes, it's rock. From what I could see, it's rock.
Okay.
And so this woman, are we good? Can I tell a story now?
Yeah.
What's that story? So this woman, Susanna, had some things happen to her, and she tried to tell people about it, and nobody would believe her until a man spoke up for her. His name was Daniel. And then people believed her. And this is the first instance of the Me Too movement.
Well,
I just thought that was interesting because that's literally what happened is nobody believed her. And then a man stood up and people believed her. And you're like, okay, well, that's not good. That's kind of bad.
Yeah.
Like, good job, Daniel, but also bad job everyone who didn't believe her in the first place. Like, what? Anyways, we're going to jump now. I told you we would talk about this. We're going to jump to the Victorian era of comics. So most people know the golden era of comics. That was like the boom of comics.
Right.
The Victorian era predates that, obviously.
Yes, obviously.
And so this was in mostly England. I haven't seen really any, the majority of the stuff we're going to be talking about, it was in England or around there. There's some stuff that happened in the US, but it was around Europe. Where most of this took place. So we're now jumping to 1837. The Adventures of Obadiah Oldbuck was published, and this is
Obadiah Oldbuck.
Obadiah Oldbuck. It is a name, and this is pictorial stories. And the reason I bring this one up is because he goes through a lot of different situations, much like in comics, how they're short, random, crazy stories.
Okay.
So he, failed courtships, dueling, attempted suicide, robbery, drag, elopement, ghosts, stray bullets, attack dogs, double crossing, and the threat of execution all take place within these novels.
Okay.
And
I've heard of a lot of like literature from this time period, and I'm really surprised I haven't heard of this, considering how many people were illiterate at the time period. It seemed like this would have been far more popular.
This still had written word in it. So it wasn't
but
just
I imagine you could follow most of it just by the pictures.
I don't know. It seems like it may have been more word heavy than picture.
Oh, okay.
So it was, it was those styles where you have a picture on one page and then text on the other.
Like a wall of text on the other, yeah.
Yeah, maybe half a wall of text, but still, It is definitely not what we think a comic is. It was not bite-sized.
Well, I've seen this style, and I think maybe graphic novel almost fits the description more here, even though those tend to still be fairly image-heavy as opposed to text-heavy. But I definitely have still seen this style today, where you get like a single image, and then the other page is text, and that's kind of how the whole book is structured.
Yeah. Exactly. And so, someone had to come first, right? So I just wanted to get through you see it developing, right?
Yeah.
So this is the Victorian era. So this is the first, basically this is the Stone Age of comics, for the modern age. Is that a good analogy? Does that make sense?
I would call this the Bronze Age, because I think the Stone Age was where they're just drawing it on the wall. Be like, okay, there it is.
I meant this is the Stone Age of comics for the modern age. Does that make sense? For the modern age, meaning specifically, this is where it pieces started to fall.
Yeah. All right.
Everything else was other people's adaptions and things and little pieces, but this is where they start taking things and changing them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I used a terrible analogy, and that's
this. I would say this is the scientific method of the modern age for comics, right? This is the moment they said, "Hey, this is working. Let's start tinkering."
Yeah.
This would be the very beginning of the scientific method, because they start doing it a lot better in the Platinum Age. But so again, in the what are my words? In the Victorian Age, there's something that came out called the Comic Almanac, and this is not exactly comics per se, because it's just pictures and different things in it. The only reason I bring this one up, it's not even really comics. It's kind of like magazines, whatever. But one of the illustrators who illustrated it, also illustrated Oliver Twist. That's George Cruikshank, and I just thought that was cute. So I wanted to bring that up because the Comic Almanac, albeit called Comic Almanac, wasn't really what we view as comics.
Okay.
And so I wanted to set that
almanac,
delineation.
so I guess I don't know what it was, but for me, if you say it's a Comic Almanac, I imagine this is essentially a large book with references that tells you what comics exist, when they were published, if they're out of publication, still in publication, how many are in the series, what are the splinters out of it. I don't imagine, if I pick up a Comic Almanac, I don't actually expect to find any comics.
It's just weird because it started in 1835 and Obadiah's Oldbuck came out in 1837. And you're gonna get some discrepancies and debates on what was the first original comic.
Right.
A lot of people will say it was Obadiah's Oldbuck, but then again, the format wasn't right. So then we have Punch magazine released political cartoons in 1841, which is still part of that Victorian era. And then
those really old political cartoons that people pull up every once in a while. Yeah.
Yep, those fun ones. So then 20 years later, in 1861, Fun was created.
Mm-hmm.
Fun was created?
Yes.
What do you mean?
So obviously, I'm talking about Fun, the competitor to Punch magazine.
Okay.
So that's obviously what I meant. I don't know what you thought, but
what is he even talking about here?
So then we're going to be slowly transitioning to the Platinum Age. So the Victorian Age kind of set the stage of what they wanted comics to start becoming. And so that you don't really see anything that you would deem a comic nowadays then, but you do see the beginning stages. You see it like half bloomed. So the Platinum Age is argued on when it started. Late, like 1894 is where I think it started. A lot of people will say 1896. Here's why, and I'll let you guys decide. So in 1894, the New York World released the first color strip. So it's a completely different setting than what was before. You're using things that are kind of comics, kind of, pictorial stories, but now it's a color strip. So it's a color comic, basically.
And that was a big step.
That's a big step. That's where I believe the Platinum Age of comics happened. Now, Joe will believe the next one is it because of a comment he made earlier. So in 1896, The Yellow Kid was the name of this comic.
Uh-huh.
So the first comic to have a speech balloon.
Yep.
And so The Yellow Kid actually came out in 90. I don't remember. It was 1890 something or 18.
I have it pulled up. Give me 2 seconds.
Perfect.
Got his other one pulled up, actually. The Cats and Jammer Kids.
Oh, yeah. Eli, you had stuff you wanted to bring up during this episode. I've been talking so much.
Well, I started at the beginning of American comics.
Oh, so
Aaron's like,
I didn't even have.
Eli's got stuff. He's like, Eli's like, you haven't even gotten to where I started, man.
Yeah, The Yellow Kid is where I started.
Oh, so this will be a seamless transition then.
Yeah. And that author who made The Yellow Kid, he ended up getting into a lot of legal battles over the word bubble.
Really?
Yeah.
Anytime you make something good or new, there's always some way to ruin it in America. People will sue you. People will take it.
And then, so that ends up becoming a big play. Like people are like fall in love with this comic, and he ends up making a few more, and ends up going on to create the Katzen Jammer Kids. And this is a comic that is still people working on it today. This is the longest running comic, but it's in like Norway and like Denmark, or I can't remember exactly where. Sweden, so these are the countries.
Scandinavia.
Yeah. But this was the first big hit of comics. And from here, we're going to start getting a lot more companies, competition, going a lot of different directions. I
have more info on that, actually.
Let's go. I mean, we're getting close to time, but you got another 5.
So, yes, I'll wrap it up here, or try. So the Great Depression happened through 29 to 33 is about when that happened. During this, most comic writers were fired left and right.
Yo.
That being said, most of everyone was fired left and right because it was the Great Depression. I just wanted to make that clear. But Funnies on the Parade came out in 1933. And this was the first official comic book. So again, Joe, you can decide, when did comics actually happen? Was it Greece? Was it the Victorian era? Was it this Platinum era when you finally have a book? A lot of comic writers saw that they could make.
I would say maybe we make a distinction. There's a difference between when did comics start and when do we get a comic book? Because like you said, this was a book. And so I think at that point you say, oh yeah, that's the beginning of comic books because it's a book.
But that's the first, like what you see as like comics. That's like the first that.
Right.
So this is where we get our first comic book. Finally, everything else was kind of in magazines or newspaper clippings or anything like that, just like clips, or they had pictorial illustrations or stories. But this showed comic writers and creators that they could create cheap, easy panels, and they could sell them and make decent money. And this is where we saw the first boom of comics. That is what most people would consider, the original Funnies. Mm-hmm. So in your newspaper, you see all those different panels. You see tons of different comics selling to different newspapers, different magazines, putting them in there. And that's when comics started to get notoriety.
That's how you start to get recognized, and you're having a slightly steady paycheck.
Exactly. That's when that started happening. Now, in 1938, a character is created to be a good role model for Jewish boys. Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were children of Jewish immigrants. They didn't have representation, so they created their own, and that is Superman.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me because they're like, that's DC. But keep in mind, DC came before Marvel.
Yep.
Because in October 1939, Timely's first comic book was Marvel Comic #1. So this came out.
It's actually
that's what it's called.
You recognize as Shazam. That was the first Marvel guy.
Whoa.
And his name was Captain Marvel.
Well, so in this comic, I don't know I don't know exactly about Shazam, because I know Shazam was owned. I thought it was owned by a third party.
So they call him Captain Marvel in this first one, and eventually they decided to change that.
Well, they changed that in 2000s, like when Marvel games and movies were getting big. That's when they changed Captain Marvel to Shazam, because he says Shazam. That's how he gets his power. He says Shazam. He gets a lightning bolt. Goes from 15-year-old kid Billy Batson to buff dude.
I thought it was changed before they made the Miss Captain Marvel.
The one that came out in Marvel Universe.
Yeah, Brie Larson.
Yeah. That's 2000s. That was changed then. But that was changed way then. We're still in the 38, man. 39. So I don't know if they really had a Captain Marvel created then, but I do know that there were some notable appearances in this first comic. One was the Submariner. I don't know if anyone knows who that is.
Yeah.
So predecessor to Aquaman is my guess, right?
Correct.
No, there's no, he's the predecessor to Nemo.
Nair. The
I forgot his name.
The Prince of Atlantis.
So yes, that guy is the predecessor of Aquaman, because Submariner and Namor, I think is his name, something close to that, are both Marvel characters, and Aquaman came after Namor or whoever he is, and he took off more because they used him more.
But Aquaman's DC.
Yes.
This Submariner is Marvel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there was one other appearance that I think you guys might actually know.
Okay.
Human Torch.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So the Human Torch was in that first one. I don't read the comic. I can't tell you. But those two comics, the original Superman in 1938 and the first Marvel comic in October 1939, those are where we transitioned from the Platinum Age to the Golden Age of comics. And we will be talking about the Golden Age of comics, primarily centered around Marvel, in our next episode.
Cool. Okay,
right.
So I do want to, just because we were talking about Captain Marvel and everything, I recently saw a meme that was kind of funny. So we'd be like, so you have Steve Rogers, who is Captain America in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, right? Because this is what I know. And so he spends his life fighting evil as Captain America, and then he goes back in time to live his life with the love of his life. And And then in the meme, they're like, he says, but he decides rather than fighting evil his entire life, he's going to help people learn to value love and respect for each other. And to do so, he starts a television show, and Steve Rogers becomes Mr. Rogers.
That's adorable.
So, and then you see the picture of old Steve Rogers from Marvel compared to Mr. Rogers. Like, yep, that's what he did.
Yeah.
I like that so much. That's canon now, according to us, which means nothing.
But yeah, I was like, instead of fighting adults who had turned evil, he's going to try and just help children grow into more loving, caring people.
Heck yeah.
So, all right. Yeah. Thanks. So, as always, if you just want more, we do have Treasure Room episodes where we go right after we record and we kind of decompress. We make bigger connections to longer tangents into other properties. Like we may connect Star Wars to Cyberpunk or, different things like that. So it's a little more of a nerd conversation, but it is deeper and more and wider, as Aaron likes to say. So if you just want more of this.
No, it's not deeper. It's wider.
So you can join us in the Treasure Room, and that is where we are headed right now. And so that is available to all our patrons at the Fluorite tier or higher.
Yes. One thing though, Joe, did this episode floor you?
It did. This was good. This was really good. Interesting stuff.
Well, we hope our listeners got floored too. And if you did, go.
Floor your friends.
Floor your friends.
Thanks for listening.
Leave us a review. Tell us why you like listening to us. Is it our awesome deep dives? Is it our amazing back and forth? Is it our charming good looks?
What would you like us to add or change? You can put that in the review as well. We read reviews.
Yeah, and if you're going to be leaving us a review telling us what you like about it, maybe you even want to share the content with your friends. Like and share on social media. You can join us on Twitter and Facebook. We post memes. And we actually started a Discord, so come play with us.
So a lot of the worlds we cover have a retcon. If you're not familiar with that term, it's reconstruction. Or sometimes we might use a bad source for some of our lore research. And if that happens, feel free to email us at floorfantasyandlore@gmail.com. That is floor spelled FLORE, fantasyandlore@gmail.com. And if you're angry enough, we'll read it on the air.
Yes, we will. Also, the Treasure Room is now available. We have locked a few secrets for everything we cover in there. And each week, we add more.
And you can find the Treasure Room on patreon.com/floor fantasy and lore. And how do you spell that, Aaron?
That's lore with an F at the beginning. So it sounds like floor, but it's not the floor you're thinking because it's our floor.
We hope you enjoyed your time on the floor. Think about your favorite part of the episode. Now, think about your nerdiest friend. Who is it? What is their name? They want to know about the floor. Stop holding out on them. Go and tell them about your favorite part.
Because all of this is more fun together.